Elena Voss had learned to read the sky before she read her own children's faces. On mornings when the clouds hung low and gray, she knew to keep Ren and Reese indoors, away from curious neighbors who might notice how the twins' eyes sometimes flickered with a strange golden light. It only happened when they were upset, or excited, or scared. It was a small thing, really. A flicker, a shimmer. But Elena had spent 5 years making sure no one ever saw it twice. She had not always been so careful. 5 years ago, she had been a young woman working at a small inn near the edge of Blackthorn territory, pouring coffee for truckers and hikers, when a man walked in during a storm and changed her life completely. His name was Kalen Ashworth, though she did not know then that he was the alpha king of the Blackthorn pack, a leader of wolves who lived hidden among ordinary people. She only knew that he had kind eyes, a quiet voice, and a way of listening to her as though nothing else in the world mattered. Their time together had been brief, but it had not been small. Elena fell in love the way people do in stories, quickly and completely, without meaning to. Kalen had been the same, though he carried a secret she did not learn until much later. When she finally discovered what he was, and worse, what his position meant, the world she thought she understood collapsed around her. He was not just a man, he was a king, bound by pack law, surrounded by rivals who would use any weakness against him. And weakness, in their world, often looked like love. When Elena learned she was pregnant, she thought of the whispers she had heard in the town square, stories of pack politics that ended in blood, of enemies who struck at an alpha through the people he loved. She thought of what it would mean for her children to grow up as targets before they had taken their first steps. So she made a choice that broke her own heart, to protect 2 lives she had not yet met. She left without a word, moved 3 towns over, changed her last name, and built a small, quiet life where no one asked questions. Now, 5 years later, standing in the busy market of the very city she had once fled, she wondered if all her carefulness had been for nothing. It happened in an instant. Ren, always the gentler of the twins, was jostled hard by a stranger rushing through the crowd. She stumbled, and before Elena could catch her, Reese stepped forward, small fists clenched, his voice raised in anger at the man who had knocked his sister down. For only a heartbeat, no longer than a blink, his eyes blazed gold. Elena's heart dropped. She grabbed both children by the hand and pulled them away, apologizing to no one in particular, moving quickly through the crowd. But it was too late. A man near the fruit stall, dressed plainly, but standing with the stillness of someone always alert, had seen it. He said nothing, only watched the 3 of them disappear into the crowd, before turning and walking briskly in the opposite direction. By evening, the news had reached the Alpha King. Kalen Ashworth had ruled the Blackthorn pack for 5 years, with a steadiness that impressed his allies and unsettled his enemies. He was fair, firm, and utterly unshakable in council meetings. But those who knew him best understood that something in him had gone quiet the day Elena disappeared. He had searched for her in the beginning, quietly, without involving the pack, because some part of him feared what might happen to her if his rivals learned he was looking for someone he loved. Eventually, he stopped searching, not because he stopped caring, but because he told himself it was kinder to let her go. So when his scout came to him with a story about golden-eyed twins seen in the market, Kalen felt something in his chest tighten before his mind even caught up. "Describe them again," he said, his voice low. "A boy and a girl, maybe 5 years old." The boy's eyes turned gold for just a second, when he was scared for his sister. The mother pulled them away fast. She looked afraid, Alpha. Kalen's hands, resting on the arm of his chair, curled slowly into fists. He had heard rumors before, false ones, hopeful ones, whispered by people who wanted to please him or manipulate him. He had learned not to trust rumors, but something about the way his scout described the boy's protectiveness, the way the mother had pulled them both away in fear, felt different. It felt real. "Find them," Kalen said, quietly. "I want to see for myself before anyone else hears of this." It did not take long. Blackthorn territory was not so large that a woman with 2 children could hide forever, especially once someone was truly looking. Within 2 days, Kalen stood outside a small rented house on a quiet street, his heart pounding in a way it had not in years. Elena opened the door and went pale. Kaylin, she whispered. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Behind her, two small voices called out, asking who was at the door, and Elena's hand tightened on the frame, as if she could somehow shield the sound from reaching him. But it was too late. Kaylin had already seen them, peeking out from behind their mother's legs, two children with dark hair and matching curious faces, watching the stranger on their doorstep. And then Ren looked up, and for just a second, startled by the unfamiliar man, her eyes shimmered gold. Kaylin's breath left him in a rush. He knew that gold. It was the same color that had marked every Ashworth for generations, a mark of the bloodline that could not be faked or mistaken. He looked from Ren to Reese, and saw it flicker in the boy's eyes as well, quieter, but unmistakably there. "They're mine," he said quietly. It was not a question. Elena's eyes filled with tears. "Kaylin, please, let me explain." He looked at her, and for a moment, the ache of 5 lost years threatened to spill out in words he could not take back. But he saw the fear in her eyes, the way she instinctively stepped slightly in front of her children, protecting them, even from him, and he forced himself to breathe. "Explain," he said. "I am listening." She invited him in, though her hands trembled as she closed the door behind him. The children, sensing the tension but too young to fully understand it, retreated to their room at Elena's gentle request, though Reese glanced back more than once, his curious gold-flecked eyes studying the stranger, who seemed to know something about him that he did not know himself. Elena told Kaylin everything. She told him about the whispers she had heard in town, about pack members who spoke of enemies waiting for any sign of weakness in their alpha. She told him she had been terrified, not of him, but of a world she barely understood, one where children could become targets simply for existing. She told him she had run because she loved him too much to risk what loving him might cost their children. Kaylin listened in silence, his jaw tight, his hands clasped so hard his knuckles paled. When she finished, he did not speak for a long time. 5 years, he finally said, his voice rough. 5 years, Elena. I searched for you. I thought something terrible had happened to you. I never imagined you were protecting yourself from me. Not from you, she said quickly. Never from you. From everything around you. He closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, something in his expression had softened, though the pain remained. I understand why you were afraid. I do. But you took something from me that I can never get back. 5 years of their lives. 5 years I could have kept you all safe. I know, Elena whispered. I know, and I am sorry. But I would make the same choice again, if I believed it was the only way to keep them alive. Kaylin nodded slowly, though his heart still ached. He did not know yet how to forgive the years he had lost, but he knew, with absolute certainty, that he could not walk away from his children now that he had found them. Word of the Alpha King's twins spread through Blackthorn territory faster than either Kaylin or Elena wanted. Some pack members rejoiced, thrilled that their Alpha had heirs to secure the pack's future. Others, particularly those who had long hoped to see a rival claim the throne once Kaylin's line ended with him, viewed the news as a direct threat. Among them was Garrett Voss, a distant cousin of Kaylin's, who had spent years quietly building alliances within the Pack Council, always with an eye toward a future where the Ashworth bloodline might falter. The sudden appearance of 2 healthy, golden-eyed heirs threatened to undo years of his careful planning. Garrett wasted no time. He gathered support among council members who feared instability, arguing that a human woman and 2 half-grown children with no pack training could destabilize Blackthorn's carefully balanced power. He demanded proof of lineage before the full council, knowing that forcing Elena and the children into public scrutiny might expose them to danger, or worse, might give him grounds to challenge their legitimacy altogether. Kaylin saw through the maneuver immediately, but pack law was pack law, even for an Alpha King. He could not simply dismiss a formal challenge without risking greater unrest. "They will test you," Kaylin told Elena one evening, as they sat together while the twins slept. "They will look for any weakness, any reason to say the children are not truly mine, or that you are unfit to be trusted near the pack. I need you to be ready for that." Elena's chin lifted, steel replacing fear in her eyes. "I raised 2 children alone for 5 years, Kaylin. I am not afraid of a room full of people who think they know better than I do what my children need." Kalen looked at her for a long moment, something like admiration flickering across his face. "No," he said quietly. "I don't suppose you are." The council meeting was tense from the moment Elena and the twins walked in. Garrett stood at the front, flanked by allies, his expression carefully composed, though his eyes gleamed with quiet satisfaction as Elena took her place beside Kalen. "Alpha," Garrett began, his voice smooth and reasonable, "we do not doubt your certainty, but the pack deserves proof, not simply a father's hope, before we accept 2 untrained children as heirs to the Blackthorn line." Kalen's voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. "The eyes do not lie, Garrett. You know this as well as I do." "Eyes can be mistaken in dim light," Garrett replied smoothly. "I only ask for certainty, for the good of the pack." It was Reese, small and unafraid, who broke the tension no one expected to be broken. Sensing the challenge in the room, sensing his father's tightly controlled anger, the boy stepped forward on his own, chin lifted just like his mother's, and looked directly at Garrett. "I don't like how you're talking to my mom," he said, his voice clear despite the room full of adults. And as he spoke, his eyes blazed gold, bright and undeniable, lit by the same fierce protectiveness that had first given him away in the market days before. The room fell silent. Even Garrett's allies exchanged uncertain glances, unable to deny what stood plainly before them. Kalen knelt beside his son, placing a steady hand on his shoulder, pride and love mixing painfully with old grief for the years he had missed. Then he rose, turning to face the council with the full weight of his authority. "This is my son," he said. "This is my daughter, and this is their mother, who protected them alone when she believed it was the only way to keep them safe. If anyone here doubts their place in this pack, they may challenge me directly, but know this: I will protect my family with everything I am, exactly as an alpha should." Garrett, faced with undeniable proof and a room no longer willing to follow him against their alpha's clear resolve, was forced to withdraw his challenge. His allies quietly distanced themselves in the following days, unwilling to align themselves with a losing cause, and Garrett's influence within the pack council slowly faded. In the months that followed, Elena and the twins moved into Blackthorn territory permanently. It was not always easy. Elena had to learn a world she had spent years avoiding, and Kalen had to learn patience, understanding that trust, once broken, could not be rebuilt overnight. But they were both willing to try, for their own sake and for the sake of Ren and Reese, who no longer had to hide the golden light in their eyes. On a quiet evening months later, Kalen watched his children run freely through the fields surrounding the pack stronghold, their laughter echoing across land that would one day be theirs. Elena stood beside him, no longer flinching at shadows or watching the sky for signs of danger. "They're happy," she said softly. "They are," Kalen agreed. He reached for her hand, and after a moment's hesitation, she let him take it. "Thank you for protecting them, even when it meant breaking both our hearts." Elena looked up at him, her eyes warm, despite the years of pain behind them. "Thank you for choosing to understand, instead of only being angry." Together, they watched their children play beneath a golden sunset that matched the light in their eyes, a family finally whole, no longer hidden, no longer afraid.